الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور انفسنا وسيئات اعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا احمده واشهد ان لا اله الا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد وهو على كل شيء قدير واشهد ان سيدنا محمد عبده ورسوله صفيه وحبيبه وخليله اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى ال محمد كما صليت على ابراهيم وعلى ال ابراهيم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى ال محمد كما باركت على ابراهيم وعلى ال ابراهيم في العالمين انك حميد مجيد. يا عباد الله اني اوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله والله سبحانه وتعالى يقول بعد اعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا ايها الذين امنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن الا وانتم مسلمون. وقاله سبحانه وتعالى يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. بارك الله لي ولكم في القرآن العظيم ثبتني وإياكم على الصراط المستقيم وأجالنا من خزي وعذاب الأليم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. Dear respected brothers, inshallah, in Islam, the topic of my khutbah today is a very important topic. It's about talab al-ilm, seeking knowledge for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how important it is for each and every one of us, our families, our children, inshallah, our grandchildren, and all those that come after us, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. Alhamdulillah, I wanted to talk about this concept of ilm, which is implementing sacred knowledge. Of course, we know that seeking knowledge, the beneficial sciences, and secular sciences is important as well. We go to school, we learn, alhamdulillah, we get jobs, careers, we want that for us, for our children, we want them grades, that's really important, and that is beneficial, and it can help society, and you can get reward for that, but that's not the topic of my khutbah today. The topic is about Islamic knowledge, and instilling that within ourselves, and also within our children, inshallah. So alhamdulillah, what is ilm? Because that's what they say, that knowing the definition is half of knowledge. How do they define ilm itself? And there are different definitions. For example, one of the common ones is al-idrak al-jazm mutabaqan al-waqi'. It is a certain realization that is in accordance to reality. That when you are realize that the akhirah is true, that Allah is true, the Prophet Muhammad is true, that Jannah is true, that Nar is true, you know that these things are real and you're certain about these things, this is mutabaqan al-waqi'. This is in accordance to the reality of this life and the next life. That this life is eternal and fading, and it will end, or we will end, and the next life is forever and eternal and never ends. When you realize that, that is according to reality. If it's a certain realization that's that's not in accordance to reality, then know that that is something that is called jahl. And jahl is ignorance. So when it's not in accordance, even something is certain about it, somebody's certain about it, then that is ignorance itself. And there's jahl basit and jahl murakkab, two different types of ignorance. Jahl basit is like simple ignorance that somebody can learn, knows they don't know, and is willing to seek knowledge. Jahl murakkab is compounded ignorance, where somebody thinks they know, but they really don't know. And they think they know everything, but in reality they don't. And it's quite interesting because some statistics and studies done in the United States have found that people that are experts in a field, they respect other experts in another field. Because they know what it takes to become an expert in a certain field of practice. So they respect others in a different field of practice. You know, the ones that don't respect other people's expertise are those that are not experts themselves. because they already think they're an expert in everything, and so they don't respect other experts, because I am one too, right? So this is the opposite of jahl is ilm. And Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala, he defines it as ليس العلم بكثرة الرواية ولكن آية ولكن العلم نور قذف الله في قلب المؤمن. That true knowledge is not a lot of memorizing of hadith and quoting. True knowledge, Imam Malik says, is light in the heart that Allah casts upon the believer, or casts in the heart of the believer. When you have this heart filled with the light of knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, knowledge of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, knowledge of the Quran, knowledge of the Sunnah, there is no greater knowledge than that. Why is there no greater knowledge than that? Yes, physics and math and science and history is all important and good. But why is there no greater science or knowledge than this? Because this is the sciences that is attached to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the knowledge attached to the Quran. This is the knowledge attached to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the greatest of all creation. This is attached to his Sunnah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells us in a hadith, طَلَبَ الْعِلْمِ فَرِيضَةٌ عَلَى كُلِّ مُسْلِمٍ, that seeking sacred knowledge, the knowledge of Deen, the knowledge of Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Quran and Sunnah, is obligatory upon every Muslim, whether they be male or female. It's obligatory on every Muslim, and it's upon us as parents, as community members, to educate our children and to educate our community this knowledge first and foremost. And I cannot stress how important this is, because I've dealt with many of the youth over the years now, and many different families over the years now, all throughout Seattle and even around the country and so forth. And when we prioritize secular sciences and knowledge, which is good and beneficial, over religious sciences and knowledge, then we have taught our children to love and live for the dunya instead of the akhirah. This is an extremely important point. We have raised children who are obsessed and love and attached to the temporal, fleeting life of this world called the dunya, all the material items and everything in it. That's what we've trained, that's what we've raised, that's what we've inculcated from young age to old age. Why? Because most important is you get straight A's. Most important is you do well in math and science and history. You should do well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet Muhammad says, كَتْبَ اللَّهُ الْإِحْسَانَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written ihsan, excellency in everything. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْعَبْدِ إِذَا عَمِلَ عَمْلًا أَنْ يُتْقِنَهُ. Truly Allah loves a servant that when he does something, he does it right. He's precise in it. He does his job well. Okay, we want that. Sure, we want the grades. But if that becomes number one priority, doesn't matter if you pray, doesn't matter if you memorize Quran, doesn't matter if you know how to do your wudu, doesn't matter if you know how to pray or not, doesn't matter. You know, these things, if you do haram, oh, I just turn the other way. If we think that these things are secondary, and that other sciences in school is primary, then we have told our children, directly or indirectly, through our education and through our example as parents, and as role models in this community, we have taught our children that your number one purpose is a money-making machine. Your number one purpose is to get good grades, get a good job, get a good career, and live and love the dunya. And then they die upon love of the dunya. And then they don't have a concept of living it for the akhirah. We live in the dunya, sure. We work, we provide for ourselves and our families. This is the reality. This is a bridge to the akhirah. We have to traverse this bridge, but it's not the resting place. It's not the final abode. It's not the objective. The objective is akhirah, it's Jannah. That's the objective, and that's eternal. That's what we live for. We live in this life for the next life, not live in this life for this life. And so when we teach this in our children, then it becomes number one purpose is living for this life, and that's it. And we have not trained them to live for the akhirah. And so they leave. So what happens when they turn 18? Now I can tell you a lot of stories. I have a lot of stories with a lot of families. In Seattle. What happens when that's not 18, it's 17 and a half. Right before they turn 18 and they're going to become a legal adult and are free to do whatever they want in this country. What happens? Well, if we talk them we spend school fed them the dunya and all this the whole time, what happens when they become 17, 18? I'm no longer Muslim. I've heard this many times, unfortunately, and it's growing and it's increasing. I don't believe in Islam anymore. I don't believe in the Quran. I don't believe in the Prophet Muhammad. I reject Allah, I reject Rasulullah. This is the worst possible calamity that can happen to any of us. If our children, what's the point? We want to be Muslim, we want to raise our children in Islam and die in Islam. The most important thing we can do as parents is raise our children on Islam, live Islam, be good role models and examples, educate them in Islam, and they die in Islam. That's the most important thing. What's the point of having children if we just raise them and they become children of the dunya, they die on kufr? What's the point? What's the point if they die in the Islam? So we have to make sure that we raise them upon Islam and then educate them so they die on it. Like, for example, the more effort, the scholars say, that you put, the more you invest in something, the more blood, sweat, and tears, the more you are attached to that thing itself. They say, for example, a mother who carries the child for 9 months, and then has excruciating pain, delivers the child, and then has 2 years of breastfeeding and so forth, and then all this time raising, teaching, educating, and providing and so forth all for the child. How much effort does she put? How much energy? How much time? This is the fitrah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. What's the chances she's going to abandon her child after all that she's put into the child and all the things she went through? If we give effort and we invest in ourselves and our children, and we put the blood, sweat, and tears, and we put in the energy, then what's the chances that us or our children are going to leave deen? So what happens is when they become older, they might say, I don't pray anymore, or I don't want to be Muslim anymore, because they love the dunya instead of being attached to and loving the deen and being attached to the akhirah, which is the most important thing. And for parents, it's really important to teach our children why they do what they do, not just to do it. It can't be just do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that, because then all they know is rules and what to do, what not to do, but they don't know the reasons why. And what happens when the parents are no longer there is that the children will do whatever they want, because I don't know why I do or why I don't do. It's really important from a young age that not only do they see a living example in us reinforcing their deen, but at the same time they know why they do what they do. Why is that important? So when the parents are no longer there, the kids go to college. Oh, that's some crazy times now. Or, the parents move, or they move, or whatnot. The children know why I do this. I know the reasons, I know the benefits, I know the wisdoms. The children know why I have to do this. I know the big benefits, the reasons, the wisdom. So they'll do it even when you're not there, because they've been taught from a young age to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be conscious of Allah, to have taqwa, even when their parents aren't there. Okay, so this is a really important point for us, and what we prioritize and what's primary for us in seeking this sacred knowledge of deen. And who was first taught to seek knowledge? If we think this is just for scholars or da'is or something like that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the Prophet Muhammad in the Quran to seek sacred knowledge. The most knowledgeable of all creation, the Prophet Muhammad in Islam. Allah tells him and say, Oh Allah, increase me in knowledge. Say, my Lord, Rabbi Zidni ilma, increase me in knowledge. And lest we forget, the first word revealed in the Quran is what? Iqra. The first Iqra, Bismi Rabbika alladhi khalaq. Read in the name of thy Lord. This is the first verse ever revealed to the Prophet Muhammad in the cave of Hira. Read. It wasn't just like watch. It wasn't shahid. It wasn't il'ab play. It wasn't like just, even write. It was iqra. It was read. Right? We have to go back to reading books, teaching books, and not just on everything on digital devices now, right? So you might see, I saw this meme, and it had, the next generation. They're all around this object, and they're poking a stick at it and taking pictures of it and selfies and all this stuff. It was a book. Nobody reads anymore, right? Everybody's obsessed with this. This is, how the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, how they dealt with the Quran, how they dealt with the Quran and memorized the Quran and read the Quran and reflected upon the Quran. It's the same way you use your phone. The way you use your phone, you touch it, you look at it, you open it, you check it, you work on it, you do all these things with that. The same way you use your phone today is how they were with the Muslims. So we have to kind of bring some things back, like books and reading and so forth, because that's what Allah orders the Prophet to seek knowledge, and then He tells them to read first in the name of that love. But when we do it in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, as the ulama, they say, sacred knowledge, one that is implemented in this deen, it is something that is sought, it doesn't seek. It doesn't seek you out, you have to seek it out. And if you give all of yourself to knowledge, it only gives part of itself to you. And there's always more to learn. We might think, I know, I learned, I'm older now, or and back home I learned I know how to pray, I know my aqidah, I know my fiqh, I know the sunnah, I know the history, I know the seerah. You might well think that, but you can always increase in knowledge. If the Prophet Muhammad was told to increase in knowledge, Zidni ilma, this is increase me in knowledge, what about you and I? Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajhu, he said, that seeking knowledge of this deen is from the cradle to the grave. Imam Ibn Hanbal, rahimahullah ta'ala, he was seen at the end of his life with a, it's called a mahbara. Mahbara is like, it's like an ancient, you could say an ancient iPad, right? It was like an ink pad, and they would use it, feather, and they would write, and he was taking notes. Okay, it's called a mahbara. So somebody saw him shortly before he died, and he was older, and he was writing on his mahbara and was taking notes. And he said, hey man, Ibn Hanbal, you're older in age. You're still seeking knowledge and studying and learning. He said, right? Seeking knowledge is from the mahbara to the maqbara, to the grave. All the way till I die. In fact, we know some of the ulama, some of the pious, some of the salih, pious predecessors in Yemen. They would be on their deathbed, taking notes and learning and benefiting and asking questions. On their deathbed. It's all the way till the end. So it always increases. I guarantee you, if your children see you learning, making the effort to learn Islam, making the effort to increase in knowledge, making the effort to memorize more Quran, they in turn will do the same. If it is just memorize, just learn, do this, do that, and they don't see you doing it, then a lot of times they'll end up leaving that when you're no longer there. Or they won't be motivated, or they'll say, well, my parents don't do it, why should I do it? Right? So you are the greatest influencer and the greatest educator for your children. If you look at psychology will say that the first introduction of God to children is their parents. The first introduction to God, okay, that's what they're saying, is through their parents. In other words, that's how they understand Allah. That's how they understand the religion. It's first and foremost through their parents. And of course, we want to be merciful and we want to be, gentle in how we approach this. So this is what the knowledge itself is. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says about the people who have knowledge and those who do not. He says, he says, say, it is a rhetorical question. Say, O Muhammad, are they equal, those who know and those who do not know? And the answer is obvious. No, they're not equal. They're not the same. Those who know are not at the same level. And those who do know, as long as they have the philosophy and they act upon their knowledge. You see, it's not just learning, it's implementing what you learn. Because if you know, this is post-Ramadan, right? We want to continue the momentum we've gained in Ramadan. And it's not so much what you know, it is applying how much you know. So, for example, to know a lot and not implement or not to apply any of it is a proof against you. And the Quran, Rasulullah, he says the Quran is a proof for you or against you. But to apply and implement a little bit of knowledge, and even if it's a little consistently, is going to be more beneficial to you. The Prophet Muhammad, he says, the most beloved of actions to Allah is the most consistent, and even if it's a little. So to learn a little bit and do it is better than to learn a lot and not do any of it. Okay? So this is something that the ulama mentioned, so they're not the same, they're not equal, and if we don't know, what do we do? It's simple, right? Like if I have a health problem, I have an injury, I have a sickness, what do I do? I don't know what's going on. I can watch YouTube videos, I can read some books, I have an idea of nutrition. But I'm not an expert or specialist, I'm not a doctor. So what do? I will go to a doctor and ask, hey, what's going on? I need examination, maybe diagnosis, maybe treatment, right? And if my car breaks down, what do? I'm not a mechanic. I don't go to a doctor. No, that wouldn't make sense. I would go to what? A mechanic to fix my car. Who's a specialist, who's experienced, and knows how to do it, right? If I don't know these, what do? Sheikh Google, Maulana Bing, Sahib Facebook. Where do I go? If I don't know, I go to the ulama. I go to the scholars, the experts, the specialists. And there might be a difference of opinion between ulama that is valid, legitimate. We respect the difference of opinion between the four madhab and ulama and the scholars. Just like we might respect two different opinions two doctors have. But they're two doctors. They're qualified, they're licensed, they're credentialed, they're experienced, they're practiced. They might have two different opinions, okay. But I respect this one and that one. Maybe follow the one that you prefer. But they're both valid. Okay, we have that also in ulama. Who tells us to do that? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, ask the people of knowledge if you do not know. And so this is something where we have to be humble enough to say, I don't know. Allahu a'lam. In fact, it's better to say that Allahu a'lam is that. Actually, scholars say, I don't know. It's better because everybody knows Allah knows best. Not everybody knows that you don't know. And if you could admit, I don't know, then you can at least be humble enough to seek what you don't know. If you think you know everything, well then, class, you can't seek any knowledge. And that's why they say two types of students never learn. The mustahi, the one who's too shy, I don't want to ask, I'm too shy, I don't want to know, I don't want to learn. And the mustakbir, I already know everything, the arrogant. I don't need to ask, I already know all the knowledge, I don't need to. So this is what we're told to ask the people of knowledge if you do not know. Imam Malik's teacher, Imam Zuhri, he says, قَوْلُكَ لَا أَدْرِي نِفْسَ الْعِلْمِ. For you to say, I don't know, is half of knowledge itself. So we go to specialists for what they specialize in. We go to the ulama and ask if we don't know something. And what's the benefit? What does Allah do for those that learn and those who apply the knowledge? There are two things. What Allah says in the Quran, He says, يَرْفَعُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ دَرَجَاتٍ. Allah raises amongst you those who believe. You have that iman first. And those who have been given knowledge, because we don't have knowledge, Allah blesses us with knowledge. Higher stations and ranks. If you want the higher stations and rank, are you satisfied with Jannah, the first level of Jannah? Or do you want the seventh level? You want to be raised to the higher levels? Then He said, Allah raises those people of knowledge and belief to the higher stations and ranks. And the ulama, they say, مَنْ عَمِلَ بِعِلْمِهِ عَلَّمَ اللَّهُ مَا لَمْ يَعْلَمْ. Whoever acts upon their knowledge, Allah will teach that person which they never knew. He will teach them this knowledge of Himself, the knowledge of ma'rifah, the knowledge of gnosis, and that is to be close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, pleases Allah and so forth. And then lastly, inshallah, what's the fruit? What's the fruit of knowledge itself? What's the fruit? Is khashya. The result, the fruit, the outcome is fearing Allah, be humbling before Allah, submissive before Allah. That's ultimately what our goal is. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, that it is truly those who have knowledge that Allah, that truly fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's, we look at how important this was to Imam Shafi'i's mother. Imam Shafi'i's father died. Okay, Allah yarhamuhu. And his mother was concerned about his what? His Islamic education. So what did she do? As a single mother, she goes from Palestine where he was born. And then she travels all the way to Mecca. Now, this before trains and planes and all that, right? She travels all the way to Mecca, searching for a teacher for her son. And she eventually goes from Mecca to Medina, and Imam Shafi becomes a direct student of Imam Malik. Allah yarhamuhu. And Imam Malik, obviously being before him, was a contemporary Imam Abu Hanifa, and Imam Shafi was a teacher of Imam Muhammad. So they're all connected to each other, teachers and students and contemporaries of each other. So Imam Shafi, rahimahullah ta'ala, he would be in a halaqah with Imam Malik, and he would be writing on his hand. Because Imam Shafi was very single mother. Her concern was her son's what? Islamic education, upbringing, to sit in front of the scholars, in front of Imam Malik. So he didn't, sometimes he would write on bone, sometimes on leather, sometimes on leaves. He didn't have much. So sometimes he would write on his hand because Imam Shafi, rahimahullah ta'ala, had a photographic memory. He could just see it once and memorize it, or write it on his hand and memorize it. And so he would be in front of Imam Malik, and he would be doing this. And after the lesson, Imam Malik said, "What are you doing?" He says, "Oh, I'm taking notes." He said, "On your hand?" He said, "Yeah, I'm taking notes on my hand." He said, "Oh, okay." He said, "Then what did I say in the halaqah?" Let's see, let's double check. So Imam Shafi said, "You said this, you said this, you said that," verbatim. He quotes Imam Malik the whole class, the whole halaqah. And Imam Malik just looks at it and goes, "It's not that, fear Allah, fear Allah." I'll let you do that. Okay, fine, fear Allah. So look at Imam Shafi. Because of the concern of his mother, and because of the education she wanted him to have, he memorized his Quran at the age of 7. MashaAllah. We have kids in Seattle that memorize the Quran at 9. That's pretty impressive, mashallah. Imam Shafi memorized the Quran at 7 years old. At 14, at 12, he memorizes the Muwatta of Imam Malik, the great hadith book of Imam Malik. At 14, he is given ijazah, permission for iftar to become a mufti. He is a mufti who can give fatwa, not the kind of muftis we have today. I mean, a really high-level mufti. At the age of 14, given to him that permission by who? Imam Malik himself. And then Imam Shafi, rahimahullah ta'ala, continues to study and learn masters of sciences, Arabic and Islamic sciences. And he has the old madhab, the new madhab. And he dies at the age of 54. Look at all that now we have people today that follow Imam Shafi in his school of thought, and other scholars as well. Look at Imam Shafi'i, rahimahullah ta'ala, look at all he did, and all the knowledge he spread, and all the people today that follow his madhab and his opinions in his school, and he dies before he's 50, at the age of 54. Imagine if he lived longer. MashaAllah, what he could have accomplished. And he writes one of the first books in the Usul al-Fiqh and so forth. And Imam Shafi'i, rahimahullah ta'ala, look at his ibadah. He recited the entire Quran once every day. A khatam of Quran once a day. And in Ramadan, twice a day. Once in the morning and once in the evening. every single day for his whole life. You know, we're lucky to get a juz in, you know, or a hizb or something. He did the whole Quran once a day. SubhanAllah. So, you know, you look at these examples and you look at, you know, where they, come from and so forth, and how great their knowledge was and how great their example was. And then lastly, inshallah, we'll finish off with there's a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad that he says that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants good for somebody, he says, whoever Allah wants good for somebody, He gives them understanding of the religion. He gives that person understanding of the religion. Whoever Allah wants good for them, that's a sign. Once Allah gives you fiqh, knowledge and understanding, it's a sign that Allah loves you and He wants good for you. Inshallah. May Allah make us of the people of knowledge. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه الحمد لله حمدا يوافي نعمه ويكافي مزيدا اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى ال محمد كما صليت على ابراهيم وعلى ال ابراهيم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى ال محمد كما باركت على ابراهيم وعلى ال ابراهيم في العالمين انك حميد مجيد اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد مفتاح باب رحمه الله على ما فعل الله صلاه وسلام دائمين بدوام المغفرات وعلى اله وصحبه ومن والاه يا عباد الله إني أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات وارحم المؤمنين والمؤمنات. Inshallah, just closing real quick, I'll finish off with just a story, about when I studied in Yemen for some time there in the madrasa there. And one of the things is I saw the seriousness and dedication of some of the students there that I was really impressed with. I remember when I was trying to learn Quran, some Quran, and trying to memorize some more Quran and this and that. I was struggling and it was difficult and it was hard. And then I saw a blind student who memorized the entire Quran using Braille. He couldn't even see, but he memorized the whole Quran using Braille. Perfect. And I was like, SubhanAllah, what's my excuse? He's blind, I have two eyes, I can see, he can't see. And I remember I was tired going from class to class and my legs were hurting and Tarawih and all this during Ramadan. And then I saw a student that had one leg. No crutches, no support, one leg, hopping from class to class, hopping up and down stairs, doing his ruku and sujood in Tarawih for 2 hours. Doing a juz and a half, that's what we read there. And he would do ruku, sujood standing on one leg, and I had two. And I'm like, SubhanAllah, if he can do this, what's my excuse? And then the last story, inshallah, there was a 16-year-old boy I remember that was one of the students I was studying there with, and he was from India, and he never went to the West or anything, but he came and he wanted to learn, and his mother, it was really important to his mother. And we had a morning class and an evening class. In the morning class, we were there, he brought his books, his notes, very studious, serious student of knowledge. And then he found out his mother died, Allah yarhamha, right after the class. And, that was very difficult, of course, for him and his family. And then the night class comes around, and I, told him, if you need to, mourn and grieve, anything we can do and help, and, take it easy, relax, And so the night class comes around, and he brings his book, his notebook, his pen, and he's there, and he's studying, learning like normal. And I said, Akhi, your mother just passed away today, hours ago. If you want to take some more time to mourn and grieve, call your family or something. I totally understand. You don't have to come to class, And he said, if my mother was alive, she would want me to be here. My mother sent me here for this, and if she was alive, she'd want me to be doing exactly what I'm doing. And I was like, SubhanAllah, it's just another level of ikhlas, sincerity, and of seriousness and studiousness of seeking sacred knowledge of this deen. May Allah give us this motivation, this energy, this momentum, inshallah, for seeking sacred knowledge. May Allah bless us and our families. May Allah increase us in knowledge. May Allah increase us in application of that knowledge, implementing that knowledge, practicing that knowledge. May Allah make us, our families, our youth, our children, our grandchildren, all of our furu, all the way to Yawm al-Qiyamah, all of our descendants be Muslim, inshallah, live on Islam, learn Islam, love Allah, His Messenger, love the Sharia, love the ulama, and love knowledge, and then die on Islam, dying on La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. May Allah give us all the husn al-khatimah, a good ending at death. And the last words that we say, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, reward us with the highest level of Jannah Firdaus, inshallah, all of us and our families and our loved ones, inshallah. may Allah protect and preserve us and our youth, inshallah, growing up in this country, in the wild, wild west of America. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect their heart, protect their deen, protect their iman, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, make them good, pious, practicing Muslims as well as ourselves, and good role models and examples for them. And inshallah, may their last words, inshallah, be La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, dying on shahada, dying on iman, dying on Islam. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك لنا فيما اعطيت وقنا شر ما قضيت فانك تقضي ولا يقضى عليك وانه لا يذل من واليت ولا يعز من عاديت بارك ربنا عليك فلك الحمد على ما قضيت نستغفرك ونتوب اليك. اللهم انا نسالك زياده في الدين وبركه في العمر وصحه في الجسد وسعه في الرزق وتوبه قبل الموت وشهاده عند الموت ومغفره بعد الموت وعفوا عن الحساب ومالا من العذاب ونصيبا من الجنه وارزقنا النذر الى وجهك الكريم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد واله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين. اقيموا الصلاه.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. استوى الصلاة. استوى. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا صراط مستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والضحى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلى وللآخرة خير لك من الأولى ولسوف يعطيك ربك فترضى ألم يجدك يتيما فآوى ووجدك ضالا فهدى ووجدك عائلا فأغنى فأما اليتيم فلا تقهر وأما السائل فلا تنهر وأما بنعمة ربك فحدث. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا صراط مستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا عنك وزرك الذي أنقض ظهرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإن مع العسر يسرا إن مع العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب وإلى ربك فارغب. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.